Okay, welcome. So in today's class, we want to look at how we can build our website from the scratch. And one of the websites we want to use as a sample website is the ICT Masterclass website. So we want to see how we can start from the scratch to build something like this with HTML and CSS for a start. Now, other functionalities will come in when we now move to JavaScript. But for today's class, we want to see how we can structure this home page with HTML and HTML and CSS. So without wasting much of our time, we are going to move into the code part of it. So I switch to my code editor, and when I switch to my code editor, the first thing I would want to do is to create a folder for it. I want to create another folder. I want to call it new folder, and I'm going to call it day 3 projects. So I'll call it day 3 project, and inside day 3 project I'll right click and then I click on new file, and in new file I'll type index.html. Now another thing I can possibly do while I'm still here is I'll create a folder for images. I can create a folder for CSS, but I will be using inline CSS for now. So I've created all my folders. So I go back to index. I'll close my split screen so that I can have a single screen. So I close. So we have a single screen. So we're going to start. The normal way is to start with the HTML. So remember, we have to bring in the doc type and then HTML. So we open HTML and close HTML. Then the next thing after HTML is we're going to look at the head, HEAD. This is where all our titles and metadata will come in. So we put in title. The title, I will call it ICT Masterclass. And then after the head, we go to the next section, which is the body. And the body is where we'll do most of our work. So I would want the body to be white at all time. So I can put style, background, and then background color I'll choose white. Remember, we can equally use the hexadecimal number way of naming colors. White will be $, either 6F or 3F. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is, let's see how we can start structuring our page. First off, we'll go back to Chrome to see how it looks. So if we go back to Chrome, you can now see some of the sections. So we have the first one, which is sort of blue, and then we have the second one, which is white. The first one is called top bar, then the second one is called header bar, and then we have our banner section or slider section. So we're going to treat these 3 sections individually first. So we switch back to our code, and so first off, we are going to have our top bar. It's going to be a div, so we put a div. Now I will always recommend commenting on your code, and the way you comment on HTML is open this and this. Now comments are text that are being escaped by the browser, so the browser won't pick it and show. It's just for you to know where each component lies. So at this point, we're going to put top bar, and then we create another comment which will say header, and then under the header we'll create a div which we'll come back to, and then the next one will say this should be banner. So at this point, we create a div equally, and we've finished laying out the three parts of our website. So the first part is the top bar. So to get the top bar, we can either write the CSS here, or we can make it an internal CSS. So we have three types of CSS. We have three means of adding CSS to our page. It could either be inline, it could either be internal or external. So if you are looking at inline, we can start by saying style, and which I would want to stick with inline style, and the width I'll give is I want to give a 90% width, and I want to do the margin left and margin right auto, margin left auto, margin right auto. So at this point, I can now do again is add the background color. I want to get the color, so I can first do something like red, and then click to pick the color. So it was something more like this. Yeah, so you can work with this. So that's the background color, and after the background color, the next thing we are going to look at is color of text. Text color will be white. So now this is how inline style sheet looks like, inline styling, but it's long and it's tedious. So it's better you write your styles on another, it could be another section of the page, or it could be another file entirely, and then bring it into HTML. But for a start, we are going to use this one so that you know how all of them plays out. Our next project, we can now use the other types. So we've gotten all of it except the height. We need to define the height, so I'm going to define the height. I want to make it let's see how 80 pixels looks like. I'm making it 80 pixels, and if I save this test, let's see how it looks on our browser. So equally, for us to be able to see it well, we can either look at it from show preview because of the plugins we installed, or we can go to the browser. So this is what it looks like, and it's looking good the way we want it, just that the height, so we have to reduce the height. So we come to height and take it to 60. Maybe we take it to 50, so that's fine. Maybe we take it to 40 because we're going to give padding. So if we do padding of 10 pixel all around, so which means we can still reduce this, and then we have our first layout the way it's supposed to be. So I'm going to close preview. I'm going to close preview and then remove this so we can see our page well. So inside here, let's look at how the whole page looks like and see what other things we can do. So let's look at the original page. So this is the original page. Is the top bar that we're working on. We have where the phone number and the email appears, and then we have where the socials appears. So it means we have to split this into two. Then we go back to our code. So if we go back to our code, we are going to split this into two. So how do we split this into two? It means we have to have two divs inside of this our top bar div. So we have two divs now, and one has phone number, and email, and then the other one has social media logos. So how do we split this? So we can still go back to our primary div, and in this CSS we do display. We want to make display to display as flex. Flex will align the item, these two items, on the same line, and then we want the flex direction to go on the horizontal. So column is vertical while row is horizontal in terms of flex direction. And what other thing can we add? We can add justify content. So justify content will arrange the two divs inside this other div the way we want it. So for example, if we say justify center, it means the two divs will be close to each other but be at the center. But in this case, we want them to be spaced apart, one on the left, one on the right. So to achieve that, we can do space between, that's give space between the two divs. So if we save this and we go to the browser and see how it looks, so let's go to the browser and see how it, let's preview it on the coding part on VS Code and see how it looks. So if we do preview, okay, so why it did not preview on the browser is because we didn't get the correct address. So the correct address in this case is instead of localhost 3000, we have localhost 3002. Localhost 3002 / day 3 projects. So this is how we've gotten our first part. But then let's look at what we have again. So it touches the two ends, so we have to take note of that. So let's work on that. We go back to code and go back to div. So instead of being 90%, we're going to make it 100%, and then there's still a space, but we don't want that space. So we go back to the body section where we made background white. So body here, we close the space, which we can do as margin 0. So margin 0 will close the space. So we can save and go back to the browser to see how it looks like. So let's see how it looks like on the browser. If we go here and refresh here, so we've gotten this, but it's so what we can do now is let's come back to code and see how we can adjust a few things. So some of the things we can adjust here is width of 100%, margin left, margin auto. So we don't need this margin auto and margin left because it is touching both ends. and then height, and then padding. Okay, so let's see. Again, we go back to our browser and refresh. Okay, so we don't want this scrolling. So this scrolling is because we fixed the width at 100. We fixed the width at 100 and then we added padding. So what we can possibly do is we can come here. This is a tweak that we can use, but there are other ways which we'll still get to know. We can come here and do 98% width, and then the padding, we're going to put padding to 1%. So that should take off that scrolling. Let's see. And we are back on our browser, and if we refresh this, so it has taken away that scrolling. Okay, so but then the height is still too much, so we can find a way to reduce the height. So let's go back. Okay, so another thing that we can do here is we can still come to padding top and bottom 1%, left and right. Padding top and bottom 1%, left and right, we can put left and right at 2%, and this one will now be 96. Okay, so we wanted to reduce the height because it's too long. We'll reduce the height to 20, and then we can reduce this one to 0.5. So when we reduce this one to 0.5, it means we'll have one more here, which makes it 97, and then that should look good. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks perfect the way we would want it. So the next thing is, let's look at the main site. The next thing is the header section. So to get the header section, let's go back to the code. On the code, we'll do, remember here is the header, so we'll still start with style. We apply styling to it. Width, how much width do we want? We want width of 96%, and then we want a background color of white. And what else do we want? We want the color to be I don't want black, but let's use something not very dark. I would always want to use CCC. It's a little bit light gray. And then the height, so we can work with the height of 80 pixels at this time, and padding of let's do padding of 2% all around, and then we're good. Still, we can now still bring flex and flex direction. So display will be flex, and then flex direction will be row. Remember, because we want to split the logo from the navigation bar, right? So, and then justify content will make it space between, to give space between the two objects. So now let's see how it's gonna look like, but then we'll still need two more divs inside. So this other div will carry the logo, and then we'll do another div that will carry the nav bar. So the first logo that carries the logo, let's put logo, and then let's put nav bar for a start. So let's see how it looks like. Let's look at it from our browser, so we can refresh our page. So we have a fainted colored logo navbar, so it means we have to work on the color again, the text color. And so for now, let's give it black. Black will be 000, so that we can see what we are doing. And then what will be the next thing? The next thing is for us to bring in the logo and then do the navigational bar. So to bring in the logo, we have our folder images. What we can do is, let's go back to the main site and then pick the logo. So we can do save as, and I'll rename it as logo 1, and I'll look for my folder and save it. So my folder should be, so in your own case you can look for your folder wherever it is, but my own folder should be around here, the 3 project images. So I'm saving it as logo 1. So I can now come back to the code. So let's go back to the code and see what we can do. So here we want to bring in the logo. So we bring in the logo because the logo is an image. We're going to use HTML image tag. So we'll define the tag as img and then put in the attribute, the source. SRC means source, which we want to define where we want to take the image from. So we can do this. But in most cases, you won't need to do this. It should pick a relative part. Now it's because of where I'm putting mine. That's why it's better for you to create a folder, perhaps on your document, and then drag it into VS Code, so that you won't have to have this long part. Otherwise, I would have just done /images/ the logo, and we get it. So after that, we're going to define the width. I'll still want us to use percentage, so I'm going to use 30%, and then the height will be automatic, and then we can put alternate text so that just in case the image doesn't display, we should have something displayed for someone to see and know what's supposed to be there. Okay, so we now have this. Then we can move to the nav bar. So the nav bar, we are going to have, it's going to be links. So what we can do here is we can now create links using the anchor tag, which is defined by A in HTML. First off, we're going to put hash to still load link to the page itself, and we close this and we write, the first one will be home. So we can copy this and paste. The second one, it will be about us. The third one will be, so the third one will be trainings, and the fourth one will be contacts for now. So we save. And so let's close this so that we can see everything we're doing well. I'm going to close this. And then okay, so I'm going to close this and look at our page. Let's see how it looks like on the browser. So to see how it looks like on the browser, we'll go to the browser and then go to this tab and then refresh. So this is how it looks like. So our links, we've linked it, but it's not well aligned. So we'll still go back to the code. Going back to the code, we go to, now at this point we're going to do a bit of tweak. The tweak will start with aligning the codes well. So in this case, we'll do style width. We want to give a width of 50%, and then display will be flex, and then we put flex direction. That's how we want it to flow. It's going to be row, and then we justify the content by saying justify content space between. Okay, so that with that we can get the names aligned well, but then we want to modify each of these, but we cannot start writing inline CSS on each, because if we want to change anything we have to come back to each and do it. So we want to do it at one state and it will affect every other thing. So that's why where we still bring in internal CSS. And how we define internal CSS is to go to the head section of the website after the HTML and the head, and then we can now say style, open a style tag and close it, and then inside it we can now write what we want to write. So what we want to write now is we want to write a style that affects all the links on the page for now. If we have other links that we don't want these to affect, we will come back and make changes so that you see how it works. So for now I can say A, which represents the anchor tag, and then I want to write a CSS to style all the anchor tags, all the links. So what we want to do now is, first off, let's start with font size. We'll give it 22 pixels. Then the next one could be text decoration. We put it at none because we don't want that line under it, that underlined stuff. Font weight, I want to make it a little bit bolder. Font weight, I'll take 500. So let's see how our page looks like. So we go to the browser and try refreshing, and this is how it looks like, but I would want to reduce the width of this so that they can go close to each other. So what we can do is we can come back and then go to width. Instead of 50%, we can do 40%. Save, and let's see how it looks like again. So the gaps should be closed a bit now. Okay, yeah, so it looks like what we would want. So let's go to the next section of the website. What's the next section of the website? It's this. Okay, so there are two things that are done here. The first one is this whole image is used as the background image while this text is being superimposed on the background image. So let's see how we can do that. We can go back to our code. I want this to be a 45 minutes video, but I just hope we can finish it in 45 minutes. So let's go back to VS Code. No, let's still stay on Chrome because we want to find a way to get this background image. And so you can use any image. It mustn't be this particular image. Two things you can do, but me, I want to get this particular image. You can use any image in this case. It's just the same practice. It's the same practice. So I'm going to get the image. Okay, so remember I said you can get your image. We are working on the banner section, and the banner section, let's start with styling it. Width, we want the width to still be, in this case we want the width to be 100%, and then the height, we want the height to be 400 pixels. So, and then we want to put the background image. So we go to background image. So how do we define background image? We can now call the URL, and when we call the URL, we now reference where the image is. So in this case it's under images, and then I called it B4. Let's confirm how I called it. I called it BG4 .png. So this is the background image. But then one problem that I knew from the start that we're going to be having is this, our project, that we name it this way. Now try as much as possible to avoid this spaces. So you can use underscore, but in this case I want to just do project 1. So I've changed our project's folder name to project 1 so that we'll be able to reference it easily without problems. So if I say project 1 images B4, so that should give us a background image. Let's see by going to the browser to look at it. So we switch to the browser, and then we load our page. And so remember, this has changed to project 1. So this is how our new page looks like. A few things have changed which we need to work on now. Our logo is no longer there because we changed the project name, so we can always go to the code and fix this. And then we want this to be a little bit longer in height, so we switch to our code, and then let's make this 500. Let's correct this. This is supposed to be project 1 CSS and logo 1. Everything looks good, and everything should look good now. So let's switch to browser and see. So we go to the browser and refresh this, and then everything is looking good, but then the spacing here is too wide, so we still come back to where we had 80 and change it to 60. So this way we set the page, the div height for the header. So if we take it to 40, and then let's see how that looks like. Okay, so that's fine. So we've gotten our background image. the next thing is what's written here. So what's written here, we are going to go back to the code, and one thing that we can do here is to create another div, and let's start styling this div. We're going to style it to give it a width of 50%, and we're going to give it a margin left of 30 pixels, because we want it to leave the margin, the edge of the screen. And so this should work. Then the next thing is, what did we have there? We had first heading, which we can do h1, and then the second heading, sorry, the second write-up, which you can do paragraph. So let's see what the first heading was. The first heading said boost your ICT skill. So we paste boost your ICT skill, and then the body says ICT. So we paste here, and then we save. So saving this, let's see how it looks like on the browser. So we go to the browser, go here and refresh our page. Okay, so this is how it looks like on the browser, which tells us we still have a lot of work to do. So the work we are likely going to be doing now is, let's go back to, we come back here and then say we want to work on our padding. So we now say padding. We want to pad, let's give a padding of 50 pixels all around. As a matter of fact, with the padding, we don't need this margin for now. So we give a padding of 50 pixels all around, and that should give us something like this. Let's preview it from this point and see. Right click, show preview. Okay, it's not showing well here because the screen is too tight. So let's look at it on the browser. Okay. For some reason the padding is not working. So let's go back and see why it's not working. Padding, I wrote 50 without pixels. So we can now look at it and refresh our page. So the padding is working. Padding is working the way we want. Just maybe we add 10 more to the padding to still move it a bit, and then we increase our, so we go back to our code. Padding, we make it 60, and then on h1 we'll add styling a bit. So we say style, font size. Font size, we want to make it large a bit, so we can do font size of 40 pixels. Font weight, we'll do font weight of 600 because that's the heading. And then we come back to this paragraph, we do style, font size of, let's put it at 20 pixels, and then save. So let's look at it, how it appears on the browser. Okay, so we can close the gap a bit by changing the width to 40%, and then we look at it again. Okay, so it's coming out close to the original thing, and then we'll tweak this and then do other stuff in our next video. So we'll pause this at this point. Let's go back to our video again. What we did was create a HTML and then the body, and then we create each of the sections, the top bar, the header, the banner. So in our next video, we'll work on the banner again and then touch other sections of the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can catch up with the next video, as we're going to complete the building of the entire site. Thank you. Bye.